Good afternoon and welcome to our Oak Bend Medical Center Happy Hour podcast. My name is Donna and I am your host. I am very excited to introduce our guest today as we speak about Fort Bend County EMS and the importance of calling EMS for emergency situations. Chief Graig Temple was hired as Chief of Fort Bend County EMS in April of 2015. Prior to this, Chief Temple was the Assistant Chief of Fire Operations for the Anchorage Fire Department in Alaska. As a fourth-generation firefighter, he has been a firefighter for 30 years and a paramedic for 24 years. In addition to working at Fort Bend County EMS, Chief Temple is also a fire lieutenant on the volunteer side of the Stafford Fire Department. He has served in numerous positions throughout his career that helped prepare him for this position. And thank you, Chief Temple, for joining us today.
I appreciate the opportunity.
So we hear sirens and we see ambulances zooming down the street. And I wonder how many of us have often thought about the contribution that you make to this community. I ask that all of our audience think about that for a few minutes. And when you see them coming down the road, get out of their way. They have a mission to do. But as we get along, we'll get it more into that. How long has the Fort Bend County EMS been around?
Since 1972, actually. It was formed in 1972, and we've been going very strong ever since.
And growing rapidly. How many locations do you have now?
So we currently operate 16 paramedic units, and we call them MICUs. And what that stands for is a mobile intensive care unit. So 16 ambulances. We also have 3 single paramedics that are in squads, which are in SUV type vehicles, and they cover more of the rural part of Fort Bend County. We have one of those in Needville. We have one in Orchard, and we have another one in the Fulshear-Simonton area. And then we also have 3 on duty 24 hours a day. And they're strategically placed, one east, one north, and one central.
Wow. And I also understand that you have special programs that are operating that the greater community may not know about. Would you like to expand on that?
Sure. It is much more than just the ambulances that you see going down the road. I'll start with our AMBUS program. And we are part of the Southeast Texas Regional Advisory Council, and we do participate in disaster responses, obviously for our weather-related events, whether it's a flood or a hurricane or so forth. We have a specialized vehicle that was paid for through grant funding. You've probably seen a lot of press about it, but it's a specialized ambulance built on essentially a tractor-trailer type chassis where we can transport over 25 patients at once, with our crew of 6 paramedics that are on that truck. Go to disasters as far as like a mass casualty incident. So let's say it's a school bus accident or something like that where a lot of people are injured at once. That vehicle will be deployed and we'll be able to take care of a lot of people immediately with that apparatus. So that's one. We also have bike paramedics. And if you've been to the Fort Bend County Fair Parade, you've seen us out and about there. But we're available for any parades or bicycle safety lectures or anything like that in the community. It allows our paramedics to get out on a bike where we can exercise for one, but it allows us to also get through crowds very, very quickly where those big ambulances can't make it through. So you may see us down in Missouri City or Stafford for July 4th fireworks, or again, the fair parade. So we also, we look for opportunities to come out to your local community. So that way we can talk to children about helmet safety and making sure that the parents understand how important it is for children of all ages to wear helmets. We have tactical paramedics that are part of the Fort Bend County SWAT team, and they are embedded with the SWAT team and go out on high-risk incidents. They're there to take care of the police officers as well as the other people that are involved in the situation. So that takes a specialized group to go through very rigorous training to be SWAT certified, essentially, to be able to provide that level of care. We also have toxicology paramedics, which are specialized, but they carry specific medications. We are in a farming community, so organophosphates are big in the farming community. And if someone gets exposed to those, we have specialized medications to treat those individuals. They also have antidotes for other biochem type situations. Like for, back in, after 9/11, we received a lot of grant funding for tox medics to make sure that we have weapons of mass destruction type antidotes. So we have those as well. And then lastly, our new team that we're going to be forming to be, again, in collaboration with Fort Bend County is our technical rescue paramedics. And they'll work hand in hand with the fire departments to take care of individuals that maybe are involved in some type of a technical rescue situation where we, again, carry specialized equipment for their medical care and trauma care. It's essential for us to be right at the point of injury where we can start treating right away. So that way we can do as much as we can before we deliver them to a hospital.
That is very impressive and extremely comforting to know how many services that y'all do provide. Good to know information. Now, there are always situations, and everybody says dial 911. Mm-hmm. And I know as the county is growing and everything else, if you have a cough or your toe gets stubbed, or you don't call 911, do you?
Well, basically the way we look at it is when you have to call 911, that's your emergency, and we're going to treat it like it's your worst day, and we're going to do everything we can to try to make it better for you. There are certain situations where it is better to look at your family doctor, especially if you have a chronic type cough, for instance. It may not be best to go to an emergency room if it's something that your physician can see you right away, can get you in and get you on some treatments. But oftentimes, yes, we do get called for all sorts of complaints, but our typical emergent type calls are obviously our cardiac patients. So anytime that you have chest pain or shortness of breath or unexplained nausea and vomiting, any type of discomfort in your chest and your neck, maybe that radiates to your shoulder or your back, absolutely call 911. We also definitely, we're out there in the public. We're always trying to educate about strokes. So that's another huge medical issue that we can intervene with right away and get you to an appropriate medical facility for immediate treatment to get you back to where you were. Years ago, I think a lot of us think like if you ever have a stroke, it was terminal and you'll never recover from it. And that's not the case anymore because we have hospitals such as Oak Bend and others that are just doing phenomenal care and getting that treatment right away where we can break up those clots or provide that intervention so that way you can live a very fruitful life. So it's very important to call us right away if we have stroke-like symptoms.
So if we have someone having stroke-like symptoms or maybe feeling chest pain that they might have a heart attack and they live alone, mm-hmm. Should they go and lock the door? Should they, while there's coherent, in case they would pass out or anything like that? What preparations do they need to make?
Well, those are always the most cost-effective ways because unfortunately, we do run into situations where an individual can't get to the door. And we have fantastic partnerships with our fire departments, and they act as first responders for us. Sometimes they'll have to force into a house to get us in there so we can actually take care of you as the patient. But yeah, that is great to turn on an outside light to illuminate it. Make sure your house has an address that's clearly visible from the street. We'll turn our spotlights on to make sure we can see it, but that's always good as well. If there is someone there, have them go out to the street to flag us down to make sure we catch the right address right away. And that's always good. If you have animals in your house, your fur baby, your dog may be, loving to you, but when a stranger comes in wearing a mask and they're unfamiliar with it, we definitely don't want our paramedics getting bit by an animal or by a dog. So if you could put those up for us as well, that speeds up the process. Turn off the TV. So that way we're not competing, trying to ask questions and do an assessment with your favorite news program or favorite show in the background. So that's always good and very helpful as well.
Should we have a list of our medications or our doctors and that stuff?
Wonderful things that we don't see enough of that. But we also understand that as your health condition changes and your medication changes and things like that, we're not always going to have the most up-to-date list, but absolutely, if you have a Word program on your computer at home and you can update it and change it and print out new copies, absolutely, that is extremely helpful to have your demographics on there. If you do live alone, even another next of kin or someone that we can contact on your behalf, your medications, but also if you have any allergies to medications, that's always essential as well for us, because we don't want to give you a medicine that could potentially harm you. So that's always great. But then even adding your past medical history, putting a synopsis, not things that maybe happened when you were a child, but if you've had major surgeries or if you have a significant history, like have a heart attack or a pacemaker or have had a stroke in the past, if you're a diabetic, those types of things, if you have those on that list as well, that's extremely helpful and allows us to move so much quicker through our assessment to make sure that we're providing you the care that you need.
Awesome. And just as a note for our listeners, most doctors' offices today can give you a printout of your current medications that have your name, birth date, their name, and everything else on it. So that is extremely helpful in an emergency situation. What kind of procedures can you do in an ambulance?
Emergency medical services only really took stride in the late 60s and early 70s. So we're still a very, very new profession. But we work under a medical director's license, and we have what's called protocols. So essentially, it's a recipe, if you will, of how we take care of patients. And it provides both treatments and medications that we intermix to make sure that we're providing just the same level of care that you're going to see in an emergency room. So first and foremost, we carry our cardiac monitor. And that cardiac monitor is a huge piece of equipment, not in size, but in cost and as well as performance. That device costs about $35,000, but it allows us to monitor your heart, do a 12-lead EKG, just like you get in a doctor's office or an emergency room. We can also defibrillate, which means deliver electricity to the heart. If it's in a lethal rhythm, we can stun the heart with electricity to get it to beat on a normal pattern again. We can also take a heart that's beating way too fast, and we can slow it down with electricity, and that's called cardioversion. So that device unto itself is just, that's the heart and soul of our EMS care, is that cardiac monitor. It also takes your blood pressure. It's got your pulse oximetry, so we can see how well you're breathing. We can monitor how much carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide you're breathing out. So it's a phenomenal piece of equipment. We also have what's called a Lucas device, and that's a CPR assist device. So kind of gone are the days of the paramedic actually having to do manual compressions on your chest, where we actually have a device that does it for us. And it frees up our paramedics so that way they can manage an airway, or they can be pushing medications and treating other things. So that's a great helper that we have on the truck as well. We can intubate just like an anesthesiologist in a hospital. So if someone's not breathing well, we carry specialized medications to paralyze your muscles and also put you to sleep. So that way we can perform the procedure and you're not fighting against us or breathing against us when you're struggling to breathe. We want that procedure to be just like in an operating room, where it's nice and controlled and smooth, but we can put a breathing tube in and breathe for you. And again, maintain that all the way to the hospital. We can do chest decompressions, which are actually sticking needles into the chest to allow air to come out when you have what's called a pneumothorax, for instance. We carry glucometers, so we check your blood sugar. We carry everything all the way down to Band-Aids. So pretty much anything you can think of, we can do. We can start those procedures in the field. On top of just starting regular IVs, we also have access through your bone marrow. We can actually use a medical grade drill, and we can drill into your shoulder or into your lower leg and give you medications through your bone marrow. And that works extremely well in critical patients. And that's called intraosseous medication administration. So again, I could go through a laundry list, probably of 50 different things that we do in the back of the ambulance. Those are some of the highlights that folks just don't know that paramedics can do. I think the running joke, the thing that we try to educate our folks out in the public is that we're not ambulance drivers. We're much more than that. We're definitely clinicians. Paramedics go through several thousand hours of training. We work side by side with your ER doctors and your nurses to make sure that we deliver the best level of care possible to you at your point of injury.
So I want to clarify something also, because this is amazing information. I hope our listeners are truly thinking about all this and have a greater appreciation for what y'all do and bring to the table. When somebody has a do not resuscitate in place or a living will, and they call 911, what's going to happen?
Well, that is definitely a unique situation, and unfortunately, we run into it quite a bit. So living wills are generally for a medical facility. So if you're in a nursing home or in a hospital, things like that, your condition is terminal, or you elect not to have any heroic measures done, that's generally when a living will is used. And it has also other specific parameters related to whether you want IV solution and feedings and things. And then the do not resuscitate orders are for patients that are terminal. They have to voluntarily sign the paperwork. But what happens generally is that, and this is definitely good education, because the patient and the family need to have an understanding, and there has to be that dialogue for something critical happens, because that's what we run into most often, is that the family's not ready to let go of the patient. And there is a do not resuscitate order there, and it is legal and it is appropriate. And so our paramedics, we're there to take care of the patient, and the patient is our main goal. But unfortunately, we have to then also deal with family members who essentially want to not follow the do not resuscitate order because they want that last few minutes with their loved one. So sometimes it runs into a very tricky situation. We have to try to do our best to honor the patient's wishes, but we look at the situation and we look at the family's request. Oftentimes, again, patients, when something like this happens, they haven't had this discussion, and the family thinks that the patient wants heroic measures and they want CPR and that Lucas device to push on their chest. And unfortunately, we can't save everyone. The sad thing is that outfield, when someone goes into cardiac arrest, it's really only 3 or 4% get pulses back out on the scene. And actually, by the time we deliver them to the hospital, very few people survive those types of incidents. So the one thing our paramedics in the field will do is they're not going to give you false hope. They're going to tell you how critical the situation is. And we're going to do our absolute best to follow the DNR when appropriate, or if we are engaged in full resuscitative attempts, we're going to do everything possible for the family and for the patient.
That must be hard, going from one to one to one all day long. I watch the nurses in the hospital, and it's difficult for them, but you guys are coming up on just about everything in every situation. What are your plans for expansion in Fort Bend County? Can you tell us?
Sure. Yeah, we are very open and transparent into what we're trying to do in EMS. We've had phenomenal support from our commissioners court and our judges over the past 5 years. We have more than doubled our budget. We have added 4 additional MICUs over the past 5 years, 2 additional squads, and 2 supervisors. So our budget now is about $18.5 million. We have 108 full-time paramedics that are out on the street. We've got 22 part-time positions as well. Our staff run about 36,000 calls a year, and that's not including other moves to cover other parts of the district. So we're engaged in looking at the growth of the county, looking at where the next subdivision, where the next mobility project is happening. And then we've just constructed a 5-year strategic master plan to look at that growth project, essentially go to our elected officials with a blueprint of strategy of how we can stay ahead of the curve. Our goal is to arrive at your residence 10 minutes or less, 90% of the time. So we use that metric because that's the very high end of that metric, where 50% of the time we're already at your house in 5.5 minutes or less. So 50% of the time, you can blink an eye and we're going to be rolling up in your driveway. But unfortunately, we're not big enough to have an ambulance on every street corner. We don't have enough ambulances to cover the population of Fort Bend County, but we're taking those strides to make sure that we do that. I think over the next 5 years, what you're going to see is at least 4 additional medic units strategically placed throughout the county. We're going to be dynamic how we manage our resources to make sure that we cover the geographical footprint of Fort Bend County. So that way, every resident, whether you're in downtown Rosenberg or whether you're all the way out in Guy, you're going to get an ambulance within a specified amount of time and get our paramedics there to treat you and provide exceptional patient care. So I think that, again, our budget's going to need to grow. We're going to need support of the commissioners. We're going to need support of the public because we are funded by Fort Bend County. Your tax dollars pay for our services. And we do bill for our EMS transports, and any money that's recovered goes right back to the general fund to offset our cost. But unfortunately, with healthcare the way it is today and the way hospital bills, but the way even ambulance bills aren't being paid for fully, we are seeing a significant decrease in what insurance and also our federal payers are actually paying. Again, it falls back to the county at this point to continue to be that huge sponsor for us and to make sure that this service is well suited for the future as our population continues to grow from the mid 800,000s towards 1 million.
So we, as the citizens of this community, what can we do to help support and make this grow?
Yeah, the biggest thing is to make sure you reach out to your local commissioner. Each of the 4 commissioners, if you live in any of their districts, make that phone call, send an email, let them know how much you support emergency medical services in the county, and that the fact that it's somewhat of a pride thing too, because not many counties in the 254 here in Texas, not many counties run their own EMS service as large as what we have here. The ones that do have a hospital district to help offset that cost, but it's another funding mechanism that Fort Bend County has not explored yet. But again, that's the biggest thing, is to let your elected officials know how important EMS is, and that you support whatever it takes to get us to that level, to make sure that we're providing the exceptional care that you need.
Chief Temple, you have taught me a lot, and I hope we've taught the community a lot. You and the guys and women, are doing a tremendous job in the community and have saved so many lives and offered so much comfort to people. Thank you for being a big part of this community. Guys, make sure that if you see one of our EMS and paramedics out there, thank them for what they're doing, because they are doing a wonderful job and keeping us all safe and healthy as they can.
Check us out on social media. We do have a Facebook account. It's Fort Bend County EMS. And then you can also visit our website at www.fbcems.org. Our billing department is on there, our patient account services. So if you have any specific questions, or if you need to request medical records, you can do that from the website. Again, it's just a wealth of information, but a lot of folks don't know it's there. So I appreciate the opportunity to give those plugs in, so that way folks can do some more research on us. And we do station tours. So again, if you have a civic group that would like to come by and look at one of the stations or talk more in person, we'd be more than happy to host you, or we can come to your venue as well. So thank you very much for having us and letting us explain about our service to the community.
And from Oak Bend, thank you for all you do for us and work with us. And I even hear you help our nurses out when we're in a pinch. So thanks for being a big part of our team. So I want to thank Chief Temple for joining us today, and a big thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. Beginning now, set an intention and relentless focus on living your life as the greatest person you can be in all situations. Please join us next week. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Oak Bend Medical Center Happy Hour podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's broadcast and invite you to email us at oakbendhappyhourpodcast@obmc.org with any questions or topics that you would like for us to cover. Remember, you can find us here each Friday at 5. Until next week, be mindful and stay healthy.